कर्मा मेरा जीवन सच्चा, कर्मा मेरा जीवन सच्चा। कर्मा मेरा जीवन सच्चा, कर्मा मेरा जीवन सच्चा। तन कर सच्चा, मन कर सच्चा, तन कर सच्चा, मन कर सच्चा। रोआ रोआ मेरा सच्चा, प्राणों का हो कण कण सच्चा। तनिक रहे ना यह घट कच्चा, कर्मा मेरा जीवन सच्चा। प्रतिक्षण सच्चा, प्रतिपल सच्चा, भीतर सच्चा, बाहर सच्चा। प्रतिक्षण सच्चा, प्रतिपल सच्चा, भीतर सच्चा, बाहर सच्चा। हो मां मैं नख शिख सच्चा, नहीं और कुछ उर है इच्छा, कर्मा मेरा जीवन सच्चा। हर हालत हर अवसर सच्चा, दम में दम है तब तक सच्चा। हर हालत हर अवसर सच्चा, दम में दम है तब तक सच्चा। बरसे जब रिपु भाला बरछा, सदा कसौटी पर मैं सच्चा। बरसे जब रिपु भाला बरछा, कर्मा मेरा जीवन सच्चा। पन पे पौधा साघन अच्छा, लगे फूल फल उसमें सच्चा। पन पे पौधा साघन अच्छा, लगे फूल फल उसमें सच्चा। सोने जैसा हो सच्चा, सोने जैसा हो सच्चा। जननी दे यह मुझको भिक्षा, जननी दे यह मुझको भिक्षा, कर्मा मेरा जीवन सच्चा। कर्मा मेरा जीवन सच्चा, कर्मा मेरा जीवन सच्चा।
Namaste, my dear brothers and sisters. Greetings to all of you on this auspicious day, the mother's birthday, and the love and blessings of the mother and Sri Aurobindo to all of you from Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. This devotional song was the devotee's prayer to the Guru, to the mother, for making me sincere. Because sincerity is, in fact, the most important virtue that we need on the spiritual path. By and large, the difficulty is not about knowing what is right and wrong, what should be done. The difficulty is to practice it, to live it, to live what we know. And that is the difficulty. And while I mean, sincerity is something which we can't really ask for the Guru to give us, strictly speaking, that is something which is at least that is one thing which the individual has to do on his own. But all the same, uh, since being totally sincere is extremely difficult because of the difficulties which we have outside us and more than that within us. Outside us in the form of the various obligations, compulsions, temptations, and conflicts that we face in life. But more than that, also because of the deep-rooted uh, negativities in that we have because of being only half human and same time also while we are half divine, we are half animal and half divine, and uh, and that's why we have these difficulties. And what we need is uh, uh, help, the help of the Guru, the help of the divine, also in being sincere. Uh, while I mean this is something which we have to do on our own, but the awareness of the divine, the awareness of the Guru, who is our between us and the divine, that awareness itself prompts us to be more sincere because we become aware of their presence, aware of the Guru's presence, aware of the Guru watching what we are doing, and that itself helps us be more sincere. So uh, that's why I'm in this song. The devotee is asking for sincerity, a thorough sincerity, sincerity that permeates every nook and corner of the devotee, sincerity that enters every moment of his or her life, sincerity which does not in any way weaken in the face of various challenges that the devotee faces, and every enemy from within. The six enemies, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Ahankar, and Matsarya. It is Kama, desire, Krodha, anger, Lobha, greed, uh, Moha, attachment, Ahankar, arrogance, and Matsarya, jealousy. So these are the six classical enemies that we have within. So whether it is these enemies, the Ripu, that we are facing, or whether it is uh, a challenge from outside, what we need is sincerity. Sincerity so that these challenges don't affect us and these enemies from within get converted, replaced by their opposites. Greed getting replaced by contentment, anger getting replaced by forgiveness, and so on. So that is the prayer of the devotee for a fresh dose of sincerity for which the devotee is praying to the mother. Now let's start today's session, which is also about the mother and her signatures. Before I begin, let me start with a shloka which acknowledges the central place, the pivotal place that the Guru occupies for the spiritual seeker in her sadhana, that is, in her personal effort, as well as in progress, is accomplished, whatever steps are taken successfully, whatever raises the consciousness a bit higher than what one starts with. In all this, the Guru has a pivotal place, an indispensable central place. And that is what this acknowledgement is about. Dhyanamoolam Gurormurti Pujamulam Guru Padam Mantramulam Gurur Vakyam Mokshamulam Guru Kripa. Dhyanamoolam Gurormurti. That is the focal point of dhyana, meditation or contemplation, is the murti, the image, the picture of the Guru. Puja Moolam Guru Padam. The essence of all worship or puja is the Guru's feet, Guru Padam. And Mantra Moolam Gurur Vakyam, the mantra, the devotee's mantra is the utterance of the Guru, what the Guru speaks. Mantra Moolam Gurur Vakyam, Moksha Moolam Guru Padam. The spiritual path is a path of liberation. We get liberated. We get liberated from negativities. We get liberated from the various bonds, the bonds that bind us to earth and prevent us from soaring upwards. So it's a liberation from all those. So that is moksha. Moksha Moolam. So, what is the most important, indispensable thing? The essence of liberation, or something that is absolutely indispensable for this type of progress. Moksha Moolam Guru Kripa. That is the Guru's compassion, the Guru's grace. Which means that all the effort, the dhyana, the puja, and the recitation of the mantra, which the devotee has talked about before that, in which also the Guru occupies a central place. In addition to all that, finally, the moksha, this process of liberation, depends still entirely on the benevolence, the grace of the Guru. It's a beautiful sort of acknowledgement, which it always helps us to keep in mind. Now, with that, let me turn to today's PowerPoint. So today's topic is the mother and her signatures. First, we'll uh, get a brief idea of the mother's life as seen on the surface. But before that, here is one of the gems that the mother has given us, something absolutely indispensable for all of us, whether or not on the spiritual path. It's a good reminder that we should all have an aim in life, because an aimless life is a miserable life. And then the mother goes on to say that on the quality of your life will depend the quality of your life. So there can be various types of aims which a person can have in life. Having some sort of an aim is better than having no aim at all. But at the same time, the aims can have a quality. Higher the quality of the aim, higher will be the quality of the life. And what is that high quality life which will give us the best quality? What is that high quality aim which will give us the best quality life? Your aim should be high and wide, generous and disinterested. This will make your life precious to yourself and to. Now, how can we look at this high and wide, generous and disinterested aim? What is it that binds four together? What binds all the four together is essentially transcending the narrow ego boundary, thinking beyond one's own little self. because that is neither high nor wide, nor does it allow us to be generous or disinterested. Why it is not high is because it is based on a purely mental perception of me being a distinct individual and with my own personal desires and ambitions, and they come first. And that is based on the feeling that I am a distinct individual and that I'm completely separate from others. So it is me versus all the rest. Now, that is not high enough even from the mental point of view, leave aside the spiritual point of view. Because when we use our intellect better, even then we find that all that is really not true. We live in an interdependent world, and that our own happiness depends upon giving happiness to others. So that is something which we realize also at the mental level. And therefore, this type of complete and total uh, attention, exclusive attention to oneself is not high enough. And one of the first things that takes us higher in our aims is to include others, include our fellow beings also in that progress, wish for their welfare just as we wish for ours. So, thinking beyond oneself takes us higher than an exclusive attention on ourselves as an individual. It's not wide enough, paying attention to oneself, because one is narrowing one's interest to oneself just as an individual, one is not widening it to include more and more. So, what should happen is that while the ego may remain, all those who get included in that ego circle should be more and more. That should expand and expand in such a way that it doesn't just include those whom I consider my own based on some narrow considerations, such as they are a part of my family, they are a part of my neighborhood, they are a part of my clan, or they are a part of the place where I work. They are the people who speak my language, there are people who practice my religion, and so on and so forth. Now, those are narrow considerations uh, based on ordinary mental perception. These are my own, the rest are others. But when the ego circle expands and becomes wider in the true sense, then these considerations become secondary. What is more important is the oneness at the deeper level. At the deeper level, we are all one. And that is what this person who has a different type of vision, who goes behind the surface, uh, this person is able to include more and more, and not necessarily based on narrow ordinary considerations, which are based on the mental consciousness. So the aim should be high and wide and generous. Now, once the person has expanded the ego circle, started thinking beyond himself, and included in his circle others, not necessarily based on ordinary worldly considerations, then uh, this thinking of others should find an expression. And this expression is through love. And love, in turn, is expressed by giving what one has to those who need it. And this giving should be generous. All giving is, in that sense, generous. So, generosity, again, is based on having an aim which is high and wide, which looks beyond our own little self. And then this giving should be totally disinterested. Disinterested is different from uninterested. Hmm. Disinterested is different. Uninterested would mean doing it without really taking any interest in it, not having any involvement, just doing it in a perfunctory manner. That would be uninterested, doing it in an uninterested way. Disinterested means not having any personal benefit in mind, not having in mind any personal benefit, material benefit in mind. So the aim should be high and wide, generous and disinterested, which means that one should not expect anything in return for what one is giving. So one should be generous without expecting anything in return. So all four, in fact, bind into one, thinking beyond oneself, thinking of others, and not just thinking of them, loving them, and then expressing this love by giving. And this giving should be generous and without expecting anything in return. So that is the high quality aim which will give us a high quality life. Your aim should be high and wide, generous and disinterested. This will make your life precious to yourself and to others. This will make your life meaningful, precious, and of course, happiness, peace of mind, and a sense of fulfillment will follow as byproducts of this type of a life. And this type of a life will be precious and meaningful to the person because the person is using it for the purpose for which we are here in the world. But it will also be precious to others because this person will not only be giving something which he has to those who need it, but in a subtle manner will radiate a positive influence. And in that sense, this person will spread an influence, a fragrance which will inspire others, which will elevate others, lift others. That subtle influence can sometimes be more important than what this person gives in concrete terms. Now, here you see in the picture on your left, the mother coming down the staircase. This is how she used to descend at meditation time every evening in Pondicherry. And as she descended, she captured so many. Because as the founder of Sri Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch and the friend who accompanied me, Dr. Indra Sen, they also saw her for the first time descending like that down the staircase. And that's what captured them. The mother had some thing magical in her eyes, which radiated, and you can feel it even in her picture, which radiated so much of uh, compassion, so much of peace, so much of love without attachment that it really uh, captured the hearts of so many. The mother was born on the 21st of February, 1878, in Paris, and was named by her parents Mira Elfessa. Uh, just a little additional R there, but otherwise same as Mira. In fact, the mother started writing her name just Mira later on. As if, right since the beginning, her destiny was known to uh, be to adopt as a guru someone whom she will start calling Krishna. In fact, she read the Gita as a teenager, and then she started getting visions of an Indian looking face whom she named Krishna. And when she came to uh, Pondicherry and met Sri Aurobindo for the first time in 1914, she found a remarkable resemblance between the face that she had been seeing and Sri Aurobindo's face, and she knew at once that he was her guru. Guru on the surface, but as Sri Aurobindo revealed later on, that her consciousness and his consciousness were the same, and it was only on the surface that humble enough to come as a disciple and stay a disciple and consider him the guru. Right from the beginning, even as a 5-year-old child, she was introspective in nature. She would go into a contemplative mood, and when her mother asked her, "Why are you so serious? Has the burden of the whole world fallen on you?" As a child, she replied, "Yes, it seems I am here to relieve the misery of the world, here to liberate the world from sorrow and suffering." So she knew her mission even at age 5. As a teenager, uh, she knew that man could manifest God on earth in a life divine. So the fact that uh, man is not always destined to be as he is, the world is not destined to be a place of sorrow and suffering, which is something which is considered axiomatic. Just because it has been so for thousands of years does not mean that it will always be so. The world was poised for a change, a major change, a, a major shift in the human consciousness, which in turn will change human nature. And that is the only way sorrow and suffering can be wiped out from earth, which is not just wishful thinking. That is something that will happen. And to bring that change, she was a messenger from the divine. So she knew it since early age. So she saw an Indian looking face after reading the Gita as a teenager and named him Krishna. Uh, and when the time to meet Sri Aurobindo came, finally in 1914, to meet her Krishna, events moved very fast. Although they were born thousands of miles apart, by 1910, Sri Aurobindo had reached Pondicherry, and the same year, without any further gap, without any delay, came the mother's husband to Pondicherry in 1910, the same year in which Sri Aurobindo had arrived in Pondicherry. He came from France in connection with some election work to canvass for a candidate who would represent Pondicherry in the French parliament. And uh, he met Sri Aurobindo in 1910. And being duly impressed with him, uh, he felt that his wife, that is, who eventually became the mother, would also like to meet him, asked him whether he could bring her along. And Sri Aurobindo said, yes, you can bring her after 4 years. Sri Aurobindo perhaps needed those 4 years to be in total seclusion, to be ready to share with the world the wisdom that he had to give. And with clockwork precision, the mother arrived with her husband on the 29th of March 1914. This stay was brief, uh, less than a year, from the 29th of March 1914 to the 22nd of February 1915. So just a day after her birthday in 1915, uh, she went back because her husband, Paul Richard, was required in France for participation in the effort connected with the First World War. The First World War had broken out in 1914, and that's why he was wanted back in France, and she went back with him a day after her birthday in 1915. But this short stay was very significant because it was during this stay that the three of them, Sri Aurobindo, the mother, and the mother's husband, they decided to bring out a monthly journal, Arya, which would bring together the religious and spiritual traditions of the world. And this is something that went on for more than 6 years. And it was from the Arya that the major works of Sri Aurobindo, such as the synthesis of yoga, the essays on the Gita, the life divine, the secret of Veda, the translations and commentaries on several Upanishads, and the human cycle, the ideal of human unity. The, uh, these works emerged from the Arya. So that is what gave Sri Aurobindo and sort of that provided that trigger which he needed to share with the world the wisdom that was just waiting to be poured out. Because in fact, it was a phenomenal sort of productivity, both in terms of quantity and quality, that Sri Aurobindo came up with in those 6.5 years. And since the mother and her husband went back, Arya was, the work related to the Arya was now entirely borne by him. And the result was these major works of Sri Aurobindo. By 1916, the mother and husband moved to Japan, and she spent about 4 years there. And it was from there that she came to Pondicherry. That was her second and final arrival on the 24th of April, 1920. By then, Sri Aurobindo had more or less reached a point where he wanted to wind up Arya, and he felt that he had shared enough with the world. What was needed now was a community that would put that philosophy into practice. And as if to fulfill that role, the mother arrived at just the right time in 1920. For the first 6 years, she behaved as if she was starting on a clean slate, starting from scratch, and remained more or less in seclusion. But that seclusion was broken in 1926 by Sri Aurobindo, who went into seclusion himself after yet one more realization, one more peak spiritual experience on the 24th of November in 1926. So after 24th November 1926, Sri Aurobindo decided to go into seclusion, in which he stayed till he left his body in 1950. And he handed over the charge of the ashram to the mother in 1926. So that's how in 1926, Sri Aurobindo Ashram Pondicherry got established. Formally, the foundation day is considered to be this day on which Sri Aurobindo handed over the charge of the ashram to the mother after this major peak spiritual experience, after which he went into seclusion. So the ashram got established formally on the 24th of November 1926, and the mother after that came to be called the mother. The ashram was essentially the creation of the mother, because while it started in 1926 with just about 25, a community of about 25, it had more than 1,000 spiritual seekers when the mother left her body in 1973. And it is she who gave their philosophy, that is her philosophy and Sri Aurobindo's philosophy, which was identical, a practical shape. This was a challenge because after a long time, uh, an experiment was being conducted on bringing spirituality into everyday life. A deep-rooted idea that had sort of trapped uh, humanity, and particularly uh, the Indian psyche, which was strange because till about 1,000 years ago, spirituality permeated every aspect of Indian life. So India was in fact the pioneer in bringing spirituality into worldly life. But then during the last 1,000 years or so, a deep-rooted idea that spirituality is meant only for a select few who renounce the world, go away to the Himalayas or a cave, for those, spirituality is meant only for them, or for the ordinary people at the most, after they have finished with their worldly responsibilities, they have grown old and feeble, that is the time when they can start living a spiritual life. So there was a clear dichotomy that had sort of become popular in the popular mind, that there's a clear dichotomy between worldly life and spiritual life. But Sri Aurobindo's philosophy and the mother's philosophy was entirely different. Their philosophy was that spirituality should enter worldly life. And the logic is that if the material universe, including human life, is a manifestation of the divine, it means it's just another form of the divine has expressed itself in this form, then it cannot be something unreal. If the divine is real, its manifestation has also got to be real, and therefore it should not be rejected. But since this manifestation is not perfect, we should seek to perfect it so that it befits the one that it manifests. And human being happens to be that privileged creature who has this capacity, who has the capacity to die at a level higher than the level at which he is born. He not only has the capacity, he also has the urge to do it. So human being has the urge, the aspiration to get better, to rise higher, and also the capacity to do it. And therefore, uh, the human being can contribute to the natural evolution, which will be towards this type of a betterment. And the human being can become a collaborator of nature in this process. And that is possible by bringing spirituality into worldly life, by using all life for spiritual progress. And that is what will be considered the process of yoga. So, as Sri Aurobindo said, all life is yoga. All life is yoga means all life gives us an opportunity for the practice of yoga. Practice of yoga means uh, living a life which is full of love. That is the essence of spiritual life. So, bringing love into worldly life and expressing this love by giving what we have to those who need it, making that a part of our worldly life is what spirituality is about. And that is what makes our life meaningful and also brings peace, joy, and fulfillment. So, that is the type of experiment that had to be done, whether spirituality can enter worldly life even in today's world. Because this was a sort of a challenge. This deviated from the normal view of spirituality at that time, 100 years ago. And while Sri Aurobindo had made a very powerful case for a life affirming spirituality in the Arya over those 6 years, all the works that he had written, he now felt that now it needed to be brought into practice. And that is what the mother did. The mother gave a practical shape. And as Sri Aurobindo said, that his philosophy might have stayed in books if the mother had not come. It was the mother who gave his philosophy a practical shape, and that was possible because the philosophy of both of them was the same. We find evidence of it in her writings and in her talks, in the study circles that she had even before she came to Pondicherry. And those are available in a compilation called The Words of Long Ago. If you read the Words of Long Ago, you find that the mother's philosophy was exactly the same as Sri Aurobindo's, even before she actually, on the surface, came in contact with Sri Aurobindo in 1914. So, well before that, she had exactly the same philosophy. And that's how she was the right person to give it a practical shape. In fact, the two were one. It was just uh, two bodies, but one consciousness, and two bodies were necessary because one could not have done what both of them did together. So, this is just sort of a glimpse of the various types of activities that started happening in Sri Aurobindo Ashram Pondicherry. The various departments were developed, be it tailoring or cooking or handmade paper making or agriculture. All these different departments were established based primarily on two considerations. What is it that was needed for living as a self-sustaining community, and what were the people available? If some people had some special talents and gifts, then that could also be used properly by having an activity around that person. So, depending upon the people available and the necessity, different departments came up one by one. But one thing that united all the departments was that uh, work which was apparently ordinary work, which goes on also in the outside world, was being done with a different motive. It was spirituality that was being brought into it. That work was being done in a different spirit. Another picture on the same lines. Now, apart from all these activities into which spirituality was being brought in, uh, the mother was also available for personal interaction to the disciples. They could ask her questions. They could write a question to Sri Aurobindo. Even when he was in seclusion, they could write letters to him. But personal interaction is far more valuable than just writing a letter. That doesn't come so natural to most people. It takes more effort. And what a disciple needs is a personal interaction. And the mother was always available for that. And she answered all questions, including some very ridiculous questions, with infinite patience. There were a few major milestones as the ashram was developing from 1926 onwards. And one of the milestones was the establishment of the ashram school, as it was called initially, but now called Sri Aurobindo International Center of Education. This was established in 1943. It again came into existence out of necessity. Necessity because that was the time when the Second World War had started, and many men who went to the war left their families behind in Pondicherry, in the ashram. So many women and children came to the ashram while the men went to fight in the Second World War. And that's how a large number of, since a number of children were there was need for a school. And that's how the school started. And this was, again, a blessing, the divine design working itself out, because based on the integral philosophy of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo, one could develop a system of education, the system which we call now integral education. And again, this needed to be put into practice. It needed to be demonstrated that that type of system can actually work, and the school became that place where that experiment was conducted, and it was shown how it can be done, so that learning becomes fun, and learning becomes all-round growth. And most important, at the center of it all is the child becoming more and more aware of his divine essence, not only as an inert entity, but as the infallible guide that is always available to tell us what is right and wrong. That is the dynamic aspect of the soul, the psychic being, the light within, and which speaks. It's dynamic. It speaks at opportune moments to tell us what is right and wrong. That is what the child has to learn to recognize, and also understand that that is not just the best guide that we have available for deciding what is right and wrong. It is also coupled to a reward and punishment system. When we listen to that voice, we get immense joy and lasting mental peace. Whereas if we ignore that voice, we get a sense of guilt and recurrent uneasiness. So the reward of joy and lasting mental peace as a result of doing the right thing is something that comes from within. We don't have to depend upon anybody for it. And on the other hand, the punishment of a sense of guilt and recurrent uneasiness when we do something wrong also comes from within. We may be able to escape the punishment that comes from outside, from the teacher or the parent, because they didn't even know that we did something wrong. But the person always knows, and the person who has done that thing always knows. And the result is that this punishment from within that always comes. This is a punishment that nobody can escape. So this is the essence of integral education, and the fact that it was put into practice in this school demonstrated that this type of system, which makes all parts of the being, the body, the emotional part of the being, and the intellect develop, not only develop so that they perform better, but also these parts start functioning more and more in light of that inner light, that inner guide. That type of a system is really possible, so that we bring out the best from each individual. And the individual knows what is the best thing to do, and the individual has the proper equipment, because the body and the mind have both been developed in such a way that the person also has the best equipment available to do what is best. Now, this is one of the perhaps very few places, if at all there are some more, where education starts at the preschool level and goes up to the level of graduation at the center, Sri Aurobindo International Center of Education in Pondicherry. Another milestone, major milestone, was the descent of the supramental in 1956. That is, there opened up the possibility for a level of consciousness distinctly higher than the mental in 1956. The manifestation will be a continuous process, but the possibility opened up for the first time in 1956 on the 29th of February. And what it means is that we can expect a distinctly different type of individuals now appearing in the world. Distinctly different because supramental is not just a higher type of mental consciousness, It is a new principle altogether. Just as the movement from matter to life was one major leap in evolution, from life to mind, another leap, from the mind to the supramental will be yet another leap. So we can expect a distinctly different type of human population, and some evidences of it have already started uh, appearing. And there's a growing feeling that the children being born today, many of them in large numbers, are very different from the way children used to be. So the descent of the supramental happened in 1956 as a result of the work put in by Sri Aurobindo and the mother. Yet another milestone was the foundation of Auroville in 1968, a, a place quite close to Pondicherry, which was conceived as an international township where people from all over the world would come and live a life guided by the teachings of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, a life which embraces spirituality, which brings spirituality into worldly life. And this will be a place which no country will be able to call its own. That was the vision that the mother had for Orwell. Now, if in retrospect we see, we find that although Sri Aurobindo and the mother were born thousands of miles apart, at the right moment, the right things kept happening so that the circumstances were created for the two of them to come together when the preparation for their coming together and their collaboration to begin. When the time had arrived, it happened. So while the mother was born in France, uh, Pondicherry happened to be a French colony, and that is where Sri Aurobindo went and settled. So this may not be just a coincidence. It may be something which was required for working out of that divine design. And when the moment for both of them to meet approached, events moved very fast from 1910 to 1914. Sri Aurobindo went to Pondicherry in 1910. The mother's husband also went there in 1910. And in 1914, both of them were there. And the fact that their philosophy was the same, even before they met each other, uh, shows that the two of them were in fact one. There were two bodies, but there was one consciousness and one mission for the world. After 1926, there was a sort of a division of work. Sri Aurobindo took care of the inner work and the mother of the outer work, and both are important in integral yoga. And both were best suited for the type of work that they did. Sri Aurobindo, with his Indian ancestry, was probably, in fact, better suited for inner work, whereas the mother, with her Western upbringing, was better suited for outer work because perfection in outer work is the hallmark of the West. And the mother brought that while developing the ashram, the cleanliness, punctuality, discipline, order, and everything, organization and administration, organizational and administrative perfection, all the things that we associate with the West were brought in to the ashram uh, while giving a spiritual orientation to all these activities. So the result was that the collaboration between Sri Aurobindo and the mother gave the world the best of the East and the best of the West. Sri Aurobindo in Savitri has said a lot, which, although it has been said about Savitri, it's quite clear that in fact it is the mother whom he had in mind when he was talking of Savitri. So, I mean, those of you who are familiar with Savitri would have seen that Sri Aurobindo was nothing but Ashwapati, or Ashwapati in Savitri was nothing but Sri Aurobindo himself. And Savitri in Savitri was the mother. So these are a few things that he has said. All in her pointed to a nobler kind. So everything in her was very different from the ordinary, and it was a different type of a kind altogether, a nobler kind. And then she was very large hearted. She was full of love for everybody. Love in her was wider than the universe. The whole world could take refuge in her single heart. The mother stayed in Pondicherry after she arrived the second time on the 24th of April 1920 till she left the body on the 17th of November 1973. So, more than 53 years, she stayed there without leaving Pondicherry for even a single day. She continues to be there, although not in the physical. She continues to be there and everywhere and continues to inspire, love, and guide and protect her children all over the world. Here's a gem of a prayer that she has given us, and uh, very simple, but at the same time very profound. Grant that I may do as well as to do. So the prayer is for what I should do and how I should do it. I should do it as well as I can, not as well as possible. I may not be able to do it in the best possible way, but at least I should do it as well as I can. With all my limitations, let me do it as well as I can. And what is it that I should do as well as I can? The best thing to do. And how do I know what is the best thing to do? From that light within that tells me what is the best thing to do. Here's another very beautiful quote. To know is good, to live is better, to be that is perfect. To know is good, and by and large, we know what is right and wrong. We know how we should live, but then that knowledge is not enough. That knowledge should be put into practice. Putting the knowledge into practice is living that knowledge. So to know is good, to live is better. So to live that knowledge is better than just knowing it. To be that is perfect. To be means that we identify ourselves with that knowledge so that living that knowledge does not require effort. It becomes second nature to live in terms of that knowledge. That knowledge has become so much a part of us, that knowledge has been internalized so well that to practice it comes naturally, comes spontaneously. So the practice of that knowledge becomes spontaneous, natural, and constant. It's not that we deviate from it, then remember, and I deviated, and then try to correct. Living constantly and entirely in terms of that knowledge is to be that knowledge that is perfect. And underneath, you find the mother's signature. The mother's signature is not just that she assigned an M because her name started with an M. It has a meaning to it, and what meaning this signature has, we shall see after a while. Uh, Before we discuss the signature itself, let's have it in music. The music on her signature in lyrics that were composed recently by Dr. Alok Pandey, one of the most beautiful children of the mother, whom you will also have an opportunity to listen on this Thursday in the YES program at 8:30 in the morning, same time, usual time of the classes. So Dr. Alok Pandey has written the lyrics which give us the significance of this signature, the signature of the mother, as given by the mother herself. The mother had once revealed what her signature signified, and Dr. Alok Pandey has given it a shape in the form of lyrics, which you shall hear in the voice that you are familiar with by now, the melodious voice of Mithu. So we'll have a short interval during which you can listen to that beautiful devotional song on the mother's signature.
काल पृष्ठ पर परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर, परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर, नवयुग का उन्मेष कर रहे, नवयुग का उन्मेष कर रहे, परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर, परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर, देखे हमने काल पृष्ठ पर परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर। नवविहंग स्वर्णिम लोकों से, नवविहंग स्वर्णिम लोकों से, उतरे यहाँ मनुज भूमि पर, उतरे यहाँ मनुज भूमि पर, सदा हृदय में बसने आए, सदा हृदय में बसने आए, परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर, परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर, देखे हमने काल पृष्ठ पर परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर। ले आए हैं सत्यलोक से, ले आए हैं सत्यलोक से, परम प्रभु की शाश्वत वाणी, परम प्रभु की शाश्वत वाणी, वचन प्रभु का ले आए हैं, वचन प्रभु का ले आए हैं, परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर, परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर, देखे हमने काल पृष्ठ पर परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर। श्री माँ के हस्ताक्षर है यह, श्री माँ के हस्ताक्षर है यह, शाश्वत का शाश्वत आश्वासन, शाश्वत का शाश्वत आश्वासन, परम प्रभु का तथास्तु है, परम प्रभु का तथास्तु है, परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर, परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर, देखे हमने काल पृष्ठ पर परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर, नवयुग का उन्मेष कर रहे, परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर, परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर, परमा जननी के हस्ताक्षर।
So you heard a beautiful musical expression which talked about the mother's signature, and as the song said, it is a vihang, a bird that has descended on earth. The bird, which is a messenger of the divine, to give an expression to the divine will in human language. And who was this bird? The mother herself. So she was a messenger of the supreme, messenger of the divine on earth, to give a practical expression, an expression in human activities and in human language to the divine will. And with what purpose? To inaugurate a new age, Navayug Kaunmesh. So that was the of earth, which had to be ushered in by a messenger from the divine. And that's what the mother was. And that's why the type of signature that she adopted, which is a graphic representation, a pictorial representation of a bird descending on earth. She herself explained it. She herself explained it once. So these are the signatures here. And she wrote that this is a graphic representation of the signature. It means the bird of peace descending upon earth. It has its wings tilted towards the earth. You can make out the bird is flying down. It is coming down to the earth. You see the angle of its wings and how it is descending towards the earth. It is to bring peace. It is the messenger of peace, the bird of peace descending upon earth. And while explaining it, she was sketching on a piece of paper, and that paper has survived. And here's a picture of that paper, the messenger of peace descending on earth. So here she has explained it in her own hand. The signatures underneath her name as she started writing it, MIRA, and then the bird, and underneath that, the resemblance that the signature has to this bird, and here the what each part of the signature represents, and then the bird of grace, messenger from the Supreme. We'll analyze it bit by bit and have a look at a small bit at a time. So this is an enlarged view of the bird, and underneath the mother signature showing the resemblance. So this is the tail here, the tail of the bird, the two wings, and this is the head. And here it is, the same thing explained on this signature. The tail, the other wing, the wing, the other wing, and these dots are the eyes of the bird. This is the head. So it's coming down like this. Here are a few gems from the mother. Try to take pleasure in all you do, but never do anything for the sake of pleasure. Enjoy your work. Don't do anything for what you do should lift up the consciousness. That is the most significant consequence of what we do. So all that we do should be thought of in terms of whether it will take our consciousness up, leave it the same, or bring it down. The consequences in terms of consciousness are what is important, not whether we get pleasure out of it. Pleasure is secondary, but all the same, try to take pleasure in all you do. And if we consciously do what will elevate the consciousness, pleasure will always follow as a byproduct. But has also emphasized the simplicity of life. We make it unduly complex by introducing into it many mental considerations. But if one looks at things from the height of eternity, everything is simple. That reminds me of a little quote from Richard Carlson, the American psychologist, who has talked a lot about stress management, uh, where he says that small things. Don't worry about small things. And then he adds, everything is a small thing. So when you look at things from that height, everything appears so small. And in your own life, you would see that if you were extremely worked up about something that happened 10 years ago, 10 years ago, you were very upset about it. But today, when you look at it in retrospect, you feel it was something so minor, so insignificant. Why had I become so tense? फिजूल में इतनी टेंशन ले ली थी. That's the way you would feel. So things can be very simple if we do not introduce into them unnecessary mental complications. Things can be very simple if we do not look at them purely in terms of right now and here, in concrete terms, in terms of the ordinary world, from the ordinary mental consciousness. Once we view it from a height, everything becomes simple. The way, if you are in an aeroplane and you look down, suppose you are uh, crossing the border from one country to another while you are in the air, going from the airspace of one country and passing through the airspace of another, you see the boundaries. You don't see any boundaries. You see just one world. Even if you're flying low enough to be able to see the earth, all you will see is a continuous expanse of greenery and mountains and the sky, and here and there a little evidence of human beings having spoilt that pristine beauty as a sort of an indication things are around, they have spoilt what nature created. Apart from that, you will hardly feel that you are moving from one country to another. Things become so simple. So, how simple everything is for him who sees all things from the height of thy eternity. This is a view of the picture, view of the Sri Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch from where I'm speaking, and where we have many events lined up today to celebrate the mother's birthday. Today, any time of the day you turn up here, if you are able to, you'll find something of interest going on. If nothing else, at least you'll be able to watch 3 exhibitions. One exhibition is Sri Smriti, which is an exhibition of the objects used by the mother, touched by the mother, given as a gift by the mother to Tara Didi. Uh, those are the types of objects which have been displayed in Sri Smriti. Then there is an exhibition on the life of Sri Aurobindo. And there's also an exhibition, an art exhibition, in which you'll find the artworks of a large number of artists. Many of them have drawn Sri Aurobindo and the mother, and you'll find other things also, because the title of that art exhibition is, or the theme of that art exhibition is, All Life is Yoga. So you'll find various aspects of life also depicted by various artists in those paintings. The paintings in this PowerPoint presentations uh, had been made by Ananya Vachar, Smiha Kapoor, and Subhash Chandra. Ananya and Smiha are former students of the Mothers International School, and Subhash Chandra is a fresh graduate of the College of Art, Delhi. Your questions and comments are always welcome. You may send an email to yes@yesspirituality.com. Gratitude to the Mother and Sri Aurobindo for making these sessions possible. And thank you all for being there.
गाए, माँ मीरा के गान। आओ हम सब मिल कर गाए, माँ मीरा के गान। आओ हम सब मिल कर गाए, माँ मीरा के गान। स्वर्ण मुकुट मस्तक पर भाता, स्वर्ण मुकुट मस्तक पर भाता। चरणों में सागर लहराता, चरणों में सागर लहराता। लहर लहर गंगा जमुना भी, लहर लहर गंगा जमुना भी। गाती यश के गान, गाती यश के गान। आओ हम सब मिल कर गाए, माँ मीरा के गान। आओ हम सब मिल कर गाएं, माँ मीरा के गान। हिमगिरि सा शुभ भाल मनोरम, हिमगिरि सा शुभ भाल मनोरम। दिव्य मूर्ति यह जग में अनुपम, दिव्य मूर्ति यह जग में अनुपम। देवों में पूजित जो माता, देवों में पूजित जो माता। सबसे अधिक महान, सबसे अधिक महान। आओ हम सब मिल कर गाएं, माँ मीरा के गान। आओ हम सब मिल कर गाएं। जो हम सब की क्षेम करीनी, जो हम सब की क्षेम करीनी। सकल विश्व की शक्ति धारिणी, सकल विश्व की शक्ति धारिणी। उसकी प्रतिपल करें वंदना, उसकी प्रतिपल करें वंदना। हम माँ की संतान, हम माँ की संतान। आओ हम सब मिल कर गाएं, माँ मीरा के गान। आओ हम सब मिल कर गाएं, माँ मीरा के गान।
Before we go to the questions and answer, let me make up for one thing, small thing that I left out. Not small thing, actually big thing, but it will not take too long to say it. In the song on the signatures of the mother, besides Mithu, you saw two other singers. They're again two beautiful children of the mother, blessed with melodious voices. One of them was Sapna Mukherjee, and the other, whom you have seen in many of the previous sessions also, Prem Shila. So the three of them together sang on a special occasion recently, and on this one on signatures. I think it was on the 24th of April last year, which is also a Darshan day. That's when the three of them together sang that song on the signatures. Now over to Arunima.
Thank you, sir, for the beautiful session. If we have any questions, the participants, they can raise the hand or put up the question in the chat box.
Very often sessions like this do not invite questions, but the mother always loved questions. So that's why we always encourage them. In fact, she did not like a class if the students were not asking any questions. She would tell them that I'll stop teaching unless you ask questions.
So I don't think participants today have any questions. So thank you again, everyone, for being with us. We will close today's session with a moment of peaceful silence. Namaste.